CLG, an absolute dumpster fire. FlyQuest and Golden Guardians, no longer a dumpster fire. Guys, this is episode 50 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. We are halfway there. I'm Yogi Bear, joined by Boo Boo, and we're gonna go steal some picnic baskets, huh, Boo Boo?
Oh no.
On a more serious note,
Oh no.
Blue Jay and J&T 250, because who else would it be? Okay, let's get more serious because there's some shit to talk about this week with CLG. When I say dumpster fire, it's not just on the Rift, it's off the Rift now, and there's a lot of drama around CLG and how they decided to release some information about possibly benching some players. It's looking likely at this point. J&T, you want to give some cliff notes, or how do you want to get into this thing?
Basically, to give like the quick TLDR, CLG basically released a breaking point style of clip on their Twitter. And again, to quickly summarize for those who don't know breaking point, it's probably like the most famous slash iconic, at least League of Legends, well, definitely the most famous slash iconic League of Legends sort of documentary. I don't really know how big it is outside of like just League, but it's basically known as like one of the primary reasons why a lot of players on that old team season 6 Team Liquid lineup, their careers are kind of in the dumps. And CLG kind of did their own rendition of this, where it was their post like meeting after their Sunday match, where their general manager Tafokins, the guy whom Blue Jay doesn't like very much, basically informed the team that
into him just a couple of weeks ago,
basically just informed the team that, yeah, you guys are bad and we're going to be making roster substitutions. There's a lot more to discuss in the video, but the gist of it is that it was such a poorly timed video that they released, which also was like a sponsored video, which people really didn't like about it. It's just all gone wrong for CLG this year. There's just nothing good about it.
So they start off by just saying, basically, it's unfortunate that you guys were able to beat TSM, but not able to go 3-0 on the week. And because they didn't get their 3-0, like they're going to have to do some benchings and things aren't clicking. And the way I look at it is that this wasn't bad intentions. This was just stupidity. That's how I look at it. Like, I actually do think Tafo's a nice guy. I just don't think he's a very smart guy. And by the way, this doesn't all fall on him. This falls on whoever was involved with CLG and decided that this was a good idea to release. So releasing this might not even have anything to do with Tafo. But he's the one that's going to take the brunt of the hit on this one because, well, he's the one delivering the message in the video and he's the GM for CLG. There's been a lot of controversy. Controversy, yeah, but there's been a lot of, how do I want to say this? Basically, all the teams that have done roster swaps this year, people have given them a lot of crap because they're not being very transparent. And so I think CLG's effort here was to be transparent. And yeah, it just came at the cost of your players. Because if you're CLG, you already know you're struggling. Wins are very few and far between. And now you have to be on camera and just sit there and as your coach tells you, or as your general manager rather, tells you that you're likely getting benched. Like you don't even hear the players say anything. They're just sitting there like, okay, like what the, like this feels awful. And so the whole thing, it feels like it was just done at the expense of the players just to get some, so what's the word here? Some content. That's what it was. And yes, it was sponsored content. And like J&T said, it was very close to the breaking point that we saw with Team Liquid years ago, although just in a much smaller format.
Yeah, the main thing that I really thought was pretty terrible about the video, not even like telling the players that they were going to be benched or whatnot, or like even that it was like a sponsored video, which was kind of stupid in the first place. But the main thing for me is like, that's just not the time or place to have that kind of a conversation. Like your team had just lost after, having two pretty terrible games on Saturday, Sunday against FlyQuest and Dignitas, whom you could argue are two of the worst teams in the league at the time. And to basically, go in front of your team right after defeat and basically say, hey, you guys are being benched and you've now lost that opportunity. And I just think it's pretty like disrespectful to the players to begin with, that the day or sorry, not even the day, like minutes after probably losing, they're having this kind of a discussion, because this is definitely a kind of discussion that happens, after, if the team has an off day, you do it after the off day, or if it's just the next day after and you're kind of prepping for scrims for the week or whatnot, then you have that kind of a conversation. But I just think part of what we said about the timing of everything is just really terrible.
So the timing, as far like it is bad. The like minutes after a loss, that kind of thing. I don't know how much that bothers me because you're going to be doing scrims very soon, and so basically you have until Monday's basically players off days. So it would have been that, or it would have been one day later. And honestly, the one day later actually probably would have been better because I think right after a loss does matter. But I think the part that matters most to me is that it's just you're using your players that are already, you're kicking them while they're down just to
Exactly.
make some content. That's the problem that I have with it, is that you know that it's something that they don't want to hear. Now you're going to film them and show them their reactions to being told news that they obviously don't want, just to get some views on YouTube because your content team sucks. That's the issue that I have with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of issues with it, but I just think, kind of how we mentioned a little bit about like breaking point, and you can tell like the damage, a lot of damage has been done from these style of videos that have been released. Fans, they do talk a lot about transparency and want to know what's going on behind the scenes, and have, a lot of the orgs this year specifically have caught a lot of flack for, being somewhat reserved in discussing their various roster moves, like Cloud9. Team Liquid sort of did. Again, there's still a lot to discuss there. But I think CLG, like, they thought that, like, oh, if we're going to be doing something like this, we might as well be as transparent as possible. And while I think fans are maybe being a tad bit too harsh, it's still just, like, they weren't really, like you said, it was just a stupid move. Like, they weren't thinking of, like, how damning this video was going to be.
Do you not think that you can be transparent with the players without like making an actual video? Like, can you not just have Tafo or the coach or whoever just come on and do sort of what Bakery did, but actually be more like, Bakery was very wish-washy with what he was saying, but would it not be so bad? Okay, let's pretend that they're benching Pobelter, for example. Could they not just come out and say, look, like, we think Pobelter's struggling right now. There are some specific things that we want him to work on in Academy, so we're going to send him there. We think RJ's has been playing better in Academy, and we think he gives us a better chance to win. Is that not transparency right there? If you say something along those lines, like, you can change the wording, of course. But is that not enough transparency to the fans? Like, the fans just, I think what the fans deserve to know is that you're making a lineup. You should know if it's long term or short term, or even maybe you don't even know. Maybe you just think, like, we want to give RJS a shot because he's looked great in Academy. That's, I think, the extent that you need to go to for transparency. I don't think transparency has to be putting a camera in, if it was Pobelter's face, to be like, boom, here's a shot. Pobelter, you're benched. Now react. Like, that's not what you need with transparency.
Well, yeah, there's like kind of multiple stages of it. Like, you had Cloud9, who just didn't say anything and just said, hey, Sven's getting benched and King's coming in. And that's all they said. And then you have Team Liquid, who there was a lot of confusion around things and sort of didn't really, they did a similar thing to Cloud9 and then came out with like a delayed response afterwards. And people were like, well, what the hell is actually going on here? And then you had the Dignitas situation where they did have some sort of formal announcement, but then just didn't really say anything else and left a lot of questions unanswered. They're like, oh,
and the logic behind it was garbage too.
Yeah,
for the Dignitas one.
Exactly. Like, in their minds, they might think that like that what they're doing makes sense, but they didn't really convey it in that kind of a manner. And with the CLG thing, it's just like, we're going to give you everything, as you mentioned, at the expense of our players.
And we've already seen like a record of benchings this year, and it seems like every single week we're just getting more and more and more of them. The only thing that's different is that this week they didn't say who it was. In the video, they just said, we're probably changing some players, and this is probably the last time these 5 players are going to play together. So that to me tells me one thing. It looks like it's probably going to be for the rest of the year, because if you had any intention on putting the team back together, you wouldn't say that, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like whatever change they make is probably permanent for the rest of the year. But we don't even know who's getting changed out. And so I guess what I would like to ask you, J&T, as I have in mind who I think they're going to change, who do you think they're going to swap?
I think at the very least, it's going to be Pobelter in the mid lane.
Okay.
RJS has been a guy who's already had some LCS experience. Yes, he clearly wasn't one of the best players, but I think similar to a lot of other rookies that have played in the LCS, and while they haven't seen a lot of success, it's clear with him at least that he does have some baseline level that can be improved upon, although I do think improvement will be very minimal because of the situation that he's in. So I think at the very least, we're going to see RJS come into the mid lane, and I think it's kind of if I was the general manager of CLG, obviously I'm not, and I don't know what's going on internally, but just strictly watching the play, I would sub out Finn. I was actually like rooting for Finn going into this split because I thought he was
Yep.
going to be a really key player for CLG because he went from being so bad to pretty good at the end of the spring split. He was basically one of their worst players for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but by the end of it was, I would say, their best player.
Yeah, he
And
was solid. Let's say. Let's
yeah,
say he was
he was the
solid,
best
and
player on
then
CLG, and I think a solid top laner, one that you
yeah.
could play around going into summer split. And from the get go of summer split, we basically just saw what we saw in spring, and then no improvement happened. He just continued to stay bad. But yeah, I think at the very least we see Pobelter come out, and if it was me, I would also take Finn out.
It's interesting. So that's exactly where I went, was both solo laners. Now there's been bad play pretty much everywhere. I think the exception is Broxa, despite having some mistakes, of course. I still think Broxa's actually been good, just not great, I guess is how I would put it. But yeah, so for me, I immediately went to mid and top. And so my first, if I could only make one, I would actually swap Finn. I would do Pobelter second. And one of the reasons why I give Pobelter a little bit of slack is because recently I've noticed that in so many of the early goings, Finn is having a full wave built up on him, and then he's getting dove, and Pobelter is always TPing to the top lane to try to, stem the bleeding or try to stop him from getting dove, and then Pobelter loses an advantage in the mid lane, and then of course he's getting gapped mid. So that I think is something that I haven't heard many people talk about that side of the story yet, whereas like Pobelter's just falling behind because he's trying to help out his top laner. And I think that he deserves a little bit of defense in that area. Regardless, I still think Pobelter's just getting outplayed anyways, and so if I could make more than one move, I would also make the Pobelter move as well. Um, what I will say though is that I hope they are not doing a full roster swap like FlyQuest, and we'll get to FlyQuest in just a little bit. But I think that if you look at trying to swap all of CLG, you're going to be really disappointed if you're expecting similar or the same results as what FlyQuest got. Because if you just look at the standings of Academy, there is a significant drop off from FlyQuest Academy to CLG Academy. Just for people that don't know, Fly Academy is in first place, CLG Academy is in 10th place. They are in very last. So there is a significant difference of what you should expect sending a last place Academy team up to play against LCS teams versus a top team. That's what I would say.
Yeah, the only other roster change that I think you could make a case for would be Smoothie, but the only reason why I wouldn't do that in the first place because I don't think that, as bad as the CLG Academy team is, I don't think their support is like even close to LCS level. I mean, he's been playing in amateur for the better part of 2 years now, and then just recently has been on CLG Academy, as opposed to their mid and top laners whom RGS has had LCS experience, and their top laner, it's like Thien or something. He's had pro play experience in OPL. So I just think both the solo laners, the academy positions, are more qualified to play in LCS to begin with than the support. Because I think you could argue that Smoothie's performances haven't been that great either. But at the same time, for me, I'm giving a little bit of, giving some slack for Smoothie, because when you're playing engaged supports on a bad team, you're just going to look like you're inting all the time.
So just specifically this last weekend, there was times where Smoothie looked so boosted and heavy, but there was also like the TSM game. I thought Smoothie was one of the biggest reasons they won it, because there was one time where PoE went to try to kick Turtle, but Smoothie was peeling really well with the Leona and actually saved Turtle, and that team fight towards Dragon actually won them the game, in my opinion, which Smoothie played a big part in. Where Smoothie looks absolutely boosted was against Dignitas. He kept ulting an Alistar, which is like, that's not what you want to use your Leona ulti for. So it was so night and day what I saw out of Smoothie. But if we go back to earlier in the split, there was also some really good performances out of Smoothie on the Leona as well. And so I guess what I'm saying is it hasn't all been bad from Smoothie, and so that's why I'm okay with keeping him in, despite the fact that I think he's still looked weak overall. I think that there's consistent weakness out of your mid and top, and so that's where I go for the roster swaps. Now, another thing that is worth mentioning is that you and I, we have admitted many times on this podcast, we do not watch a lot of Academy, and so these opinions are based strictly off of the performance of the LCS players. At least mine is, right? I would imagine yours is as well.
Yeah, I don't even know who
Just
half the fucking players on the CLG Academy are.
just to be clear to our listeners, is that this is not a RJS is better than Pobelter, or I don't even know how to say the top laner's name, like it's Thien or Thien or something. It's not even that. It's that Pobelter and Finn look like they're significantly struggling, and that's why that's where the players that we go to. Yeah. One other last thought that I wanted to throw out there is maybe you go after Solo? Question mark.
The
He's a
only
top laner that could just be thrown in and probably hold his own.
the only thing that I don't know is when is like the actual roster lock in terms of when you're able to add or remove players from your both LCS and Academy teams, because I did remember seeing not even like not official things, but just like threads on Twitter or threads on Reddit saying like, oh, what other moves should these other teams make since the roster lock is coming soon. So I don't actually know when the roster lock date is. So I don't even know if that's like a thing that can even be answered, because I'm not sure when that happens.
Yeah, so let's assume that it hasn't happened, because I don't, well, first of all, I don't think it has, but second, it's a good thing to bring up. I don't know the exact date myself, but I'm pretty sure it's in July, so I think it is soon. But yeah, let's say you could. Would you not go after Solo? I'm sure he's not all that expensive. Clearly, Golden Guardians has made it pretty clear that they're not really wanting to use him, because they went after another top laner when they had Solo. So I think that CLG could probably get him for relatively cheap, and he's another guy that you could throw in that is LCS ready, but is also like fresh start. And we've seen fresh starts do really well so far. If you're looking at FlyQuest or Licorice going over to Golden Guardians, a fresh start can mean a lot for a player,
Maybe
especially one that we know is
Solo.
LCS ready.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He already played on CLG this year, so I don't know if he's
I would
like
prefer. I would prefer that they at least explored that option.
maybe.
Let's say that.
But I mean, maybe based off them not wanting to re-sign him after lock-in meant that he doesn't want to go back there.
It's
Maybe.
possible.
Because for those
yeah.
who don't know, Solo actually did play with CLG at the start of 2021 in the lock-in tournament.
And Academy, or no? Did he go to
I
Academy
don't
after that?
know. I don't know, but he for
I
sure
don't know
played
either.
in lock-in tournament. I don't think he played Academy, because I think he was labeled as like an emergency sub because Finn was having visa problems.
I honest to God, when I thought of this, I completely forgot that he played with CLG earlier. I'm glad that I completely forgot all about it, because I mean he played so little, right? And it was for I mean CLG was just in and out. They played their round robin games and they were out so quickly. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about the roster swaps and the way they announced it, did C9 not do something very similar with Sneaky Jensen? Didn't they do a video where they were just like, we're benching you guys, and like
That
that was on
was
camera as well?
yeah, but I guess similar to Breaking Point, that was kind of a thing that was done after the fact, because they were like making like a TSM Legends style of series that they did during season 8 summer split. I think it was called like Origins or something. Or no, it was called On Cloud 9. And it was like a 4-episode thing, and it was when they sort of did that miracle run from 10th to 2nd place and then went to Worlds. So they did do that, but they didn't really release it until like September of that year.
Yeah, okay. I mean, regardless though, to me, if it's still like using your players for content, I'm still kind of against it. The only thing is that I remember is I don't remember the backlash of people being disappointed at the org specifically for putting it on camera. I think they were just more disappointed that Sneaky was benched, because there was a bunch of Sneaky fans. Well, and Jensen too, I guess, but mainly Sneaky fans.
Probably.
That's the only backlash that I remember from it. But anyways, um, a pretty rough start for the new head of CLG, that Greg Kim guy. For those of you that don't know, just announced last week that they have the new head of CLG. I believe esports. I don't know if it's League of Legends or esports,
I
but
mean, I didn't see all the
not a good
details,
start for
but
him.
let's hope for his sake that it was just an announcement and he hadn't actually taken the job yet.
Yeah, the thing is, I think he did.
Well,
That
we can
doesn't
hope
mean that
for
he had
him.
anything to. That doesn't mean that he had anything to do with this, though, right? I mean, he
Yeah,
could have not had anything to do with this. We actually still don't really know who's at fault, but we do know that there's a communication error, because for this to go, like, someone had to give the okay, and that's just not a good thing. Did you have any other thoughts on CLG? Whether it be about the video, the possible roster swaps, how they played this past weekend? Any thoughts on that, JNT?
I mean, they were pretty bad. Even in that TSM game, while they did take the win that game, it was a pretty debatable win, because
Yep.
TSM was running a completely new style of team comp, and honestly, CLG was starting to throw their lead after what they had like a 7K gold lead, and then TSM had like 2 or 3 one team fights in a row. I think CLG was kind of far enough ahead, and TSM's comp was just super getting outscaled, being like all melee. The later the game went, so CLG kind of just ended up winning. But in my opinion, they played 3 really bad games. Like we mentioned, regardless of any substitutions, we don't think that these academy players are going to bring, some fucking secret sauce that's going to increase the team very well. Because, like we mentioned, in FlyQuest's case, they had the best academy team, and in CLG's case, they have the worst. So, at worst, or at best, you're going from like, it's like a neutral upgrade, and it's just like a morale thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this team's just, they're going to be the 10th place team. I'd be very surprised to see them make playoffs based on the standings right now, with them being tied with Golden Guardians, and then FlyQuest being either, I think it's 1 or 2 wins ahead of them now. And I would put my money on CLG being the 10th place team.
Yeah, the thing is, like last week, if you would have asked me, well, I'm pretty sure we did talk about this. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but if you would have asked me last week, I would have said I think CLG is going to make playoffs. But I mean, I don't think anyone saw FlyQuest Academy coming in 3-0ing. And even though we saw Golden Guardians getting better, I don't think they looked that as good as they did this past weekend. Like, this is like, both of these teams look totally different this past weekend that we just saw. So, I mean, we might as well just get into talking about them right now. Those two teams look completely different with all the roster moves. And like we said, FlyQuest did a full swap. They did all of their academy players, you're in, and all the starters, you're out. And then they trade Licorice. Maybe that's a good place to start. Let's start with the trade. Licorice over Solo upgrade? Question mark.
Um, I think based off of current performances on the split, I would say it was like a side grade. But I think in terms of the value of getting a player like Licorice, it's clearly an upgrade. Because if you look at the situation on FlyQuest, it was pretty clear that there was no hope for this team. They were on a constant like free fall basically for almost 4 weeks in a row now. Basically 3 weeks plus an extra game because they were on a 10-game losing streak. And just from looking at their games, while Licorice was kind of inting like the rest of the team, he was one of the only players on that team that would also, in some games, generate some type of lead. Whether that's through a solo kill in lane, or whether that's through having some impact in team fights. I think Wukong has been one of his better champions on the split. He's done a lot of work with that champion, even in losing efforts. But Licorice was the only guy generating some sort of lead across the entire map. Jose Diodo kind of, I don't want to say I called it a little bit, but I think I called it a little bit. Just saying that I think his play was really going to decline with the whole Hecarim Udyr meta fading out and this more like intelligent style of jungling coming back, where he can't just do this whole full clear solo kill meta where junglers just have a shit ton of gold. Palafox clearly not up to snuff. Same with the bot lane. But Licorice was really like the only hope for this team. And while I think if you look at his performances in comparison to Solo weren't any better than Solo's, it's clear that he has a massive ceiling in comparison.
Yeah, it's like a fresh start could go a long way. It feels like a fresh start goes a longer way for Licorice, or it has anyways in the early going, than it did for Solo. Because like you said, I would say that their performances were about equal. Like sometimes a really good performance, but sometimes you just fucking run it down. And that could be applied to Licorice and Solo that we saw this split. But now with having a fresh start with Licorice, I mean, this weekend he looked way better than he did the rest of the split. Yeah, I mean, he got Player of the Week. Some people weren't happy about it, but the point is, he played well enough to get a Player of the Week award. So whether you agree that he should have gotten it or not, if he shouldn't have gotten it, then he wasn't too far behind. And so an absolute just turnaround, which is so insane. And another thing worth noting is that they now have him until 2023. They extended his contract. And so if you can find a way to bring back the Licorice that we saw in Cloud9, you've got omega value on this deal. And mind you, I feel like you probably didn't pay that much to extend the contract for that long, considering that he looked pretty lackluster pretty much all year. You probably got to buy him at the right time, I would say.
Yeah, you definitely got him for pennies on the dollar in comparison to what FlyQuest probably paid for him at the start of 2021. That is absolutely for sure. And I think just looking at it from a base level, even though Golden Guardians did look really good this weekend, and I think there's a lot to, root for and hope for moving into the end of the regular season and going into playoffs even, I think at the very least, Golden Guardians has 3 of their 5 roster for, next year at the least. I would say that Licorice, Blaze Olive, and Stixay are 3 players that I would definitely keep absolutely 100% for sure. Maybe you could argue if you could find an upgrade, most likely like a native upgrade for Stixay, that might be a little bit better. But I would say at the very minimum, they have 3 out of 5 players that are going to be good pieces going forward.
Well, honestly, right now, like from what we saw this past weekend, anyways, I actually think all of Golden Guardians looked good. And mind you, it's one weekend. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves because Chime has struggled. We've seen Iconic struggle a little bit. But I think this split, Iconic has actually quietly gotten so much better. Despite the fact that I don't think he's a top tier jungler yet or anything like that, I actually think he's going under the radar with some of the influence that he's having on games. And specifically, just this past weekend, I thought Chime had a great weekend. His rel was fantastic. It was really, really good. And so I don't think you would have seen that with Newbie at all. And I don't think you would have seen that with Spring Iconic at all. So, I mean, this team's just looking better everywhere, in my opinion. Literally every single role this past weekend, they actually looked good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, looking at it, we'll get to FlyQuest in a little bit here, but just looking at it, strength of schedule wise, you got to be more impressed with the wins out of Golden Guardians because of the caliber of teams they're facing. They played, their first game was against 100 Thieves, right? No, who was their first game against?
Who are we talking about, Golden Guardians or
Yeah,
FlyQuest?
Golden Guardians. Yeah, they played 100 Thieves on Friday, then they played TSM on Saturday, and they played Team Liquid on Sunday, and they took 2 really strong wins. They absolutely obliterated Team Liquid. Oh my god!
Didn't FlyQuest play CLG this weekend?
I'm talking about Golden Guardians.
Oh, okay. I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Golden Guardians completely destroyed Team Liquid on Friday or on Sunday, and
yeah,
definitely convincingly beat, not as badly as they did Team Liquid, but they smashed 100 Thieves through bot lane. My god. Stixay and Chime were actually like hard popping off in that game. And I think in that game against TSM, like it was a pretty close game. And I think Golden Guardians had winning moments in that game, but ultimately I think their inexperience caught up to them a little bit in that one. Licorice had a really great game in that game. I would assume that's probably what like swung player of the week in his favor, while they only went 2-1 in comparison to other teams. He did have 3 really, really strong games.
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to talk a little bit about the trade because there was an interview that Travis Gafford had with Licorice talking about the trade. And this to me was really, really interesting. So I guess normally Mondays are days off, like I mentioned before. And this week, instead of a day off, FlyQuest decided that they were going to have their main team scrim their academy roster, I believe. I think he said in-house scrims is what he said. So I imagine that's what it was. Before the scrims start, that's when FlyQuest approached Licorice and said, hey, Golden Guardians is interested in you. Would you be interested in going to Golden Guardians? So a couple of things there. One, like, I think you need to be a little bit more cutthroat. Like, if you want to be, this is real, like, sports here. If you want to be real sports and you want to be considered, like, you got to be able to trade a guy. If that's the best move for your org, that's what you got to do. I guess I respect that they're trying to, be like the Licorice. Do you want to go here? That's nice and all. But, like, business is business. If you need to trade the guy, honestly. And so it was really interesting to me that they were like, do you want to go here? The other thing that was really interesting is that they did it right before scrims. I don't think his head's at all in scrims. If like that's what you were told right before scrims, would you be focused on the game? I wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I've always said that I think esports teams are a little bit like baby in terms of like wanting to trade players, because it always seems that when a player is getting traded from one team to another, it's always like, oh, we made sure to find, the best possible spot for that player. And I think while it's nice to, kind of return the favor for your player after doing so much good work for your org, at the same time, like business is business. You got to make the best decision for yourself. The only one thing that I would say, that could be a reason why it worked like that was like maybe he had a no trade clause or whatever. And if people don't know what a no-trade clause is, there can be a clause in your contract where the player themselves has the power to, if they were traded, they get to veto and choose, which team to go to. Like, for example, if it's on FlyQuest to talk to Licorice and say, hey, do you want to go here? And Licorice could just say no, and he no go. But I don't know if they have like no trade clauses in esports contracts. I highly doubt that. This is only
I would say it's unlikely.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really only something you see in like the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB. I don't think they have it, but maybe they do, and that's the reason.
So the other reason why I really don't think they have it, and again I don't know, but the reason why I really don't think that they have one in this case is that Licorice even said that he doesn't have an agent. He is
Okay.
his own. So like that's even another reason. Like if Licorice by himself was able to negotiate a no trade clause, hey man, you don't fucking need an agent. Like good for you. But yeah, I don't think they have one. But it is a good point to bring up that it is a possibility. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about FlyQuest gameplay because damn, right?
Yep.
Like no one saw this coming. I don't care if no. If you say that you thought FlyQuest was going to 3-0 this weekend, FlyQuest Academy, I'm not buying it. I could totally get behind like you think this is a good start, like a good move rather for FlyQuest, and you think they could pick up wins, no problem with that. But 3-0, damn, dude, they
Yeah,
had a unreal week.
I definitely didn't see the 3-0 coming, but I definitely thought there was a possibility they go 2-1 because I did think that, I did mention in the previous episode that if they put their whole academy roster in, I was going to hate them over CLG. And I think based off of Immortals' recent performances, I definitely took them over Immortals. I did originally pick Immortals, but, after the academy moves and whatnot, I figured that, they were going to get the better of them anyway. But the Cloud9 one is really the one to, I think, talk about because in comparison to Golden Guardians, like I'm not putting as much in the FlyQuest stocks because of their strength of schedule, because I think CLG is the worst team in the LCS, and I think Immortals is like one of the, they're one of the worst teams right now in the LCS in terms of recent performances over the last 2 weeks. I would say it's like
And
them.
so is Cloud9.
Yeah,
even.
I would say it's them, CLG, and Cloud9 in terms of the last 2 weeks. If you look at overall performance,
yeah,
they beat the 3 current worst performing teams, but you still really got to be impressed with the win against Cloud9. The main guy I want to talk about is Triple, because I think that guy absolutely popped off this week. He's a player. He's another one of those mammoth players back from 2019 OCE who played with Fudge and played with King on that squad who went to Worlds and almost made it out of groups. He's been a pretty highly touted player for the most part. I know Midbeast, he's a big OCE guy who always talks about a lot of these OCE players that are in NA Academy and, kind of discusses what he thinks their potential is. And Triple's a guy who's been sitting in NA Academy for a year and a half now, finally getting his shot in LCS. And I think he's been one of the most, like, underrated players in terms of, like, potential skill ceiling. And to see him in LCS and completely destroy Perks in Lucian versus Twisted Fate, I don't care who you are. If you're playing Lucian versus Twisted Fate, you should smash that. You should smash that matchup. And Triple just completely obliterated him. He solo killed him like 2 times. Perks was, kind of disrespecting him pretty hard, and Triple put the pounding on him.
Yeah, no, Triple had a really good weekend. The other guy that I would highlight is NXI because I think we saw him earlier in the year. I think we did, right? When Jose Diodo wasn't over here yet?
Yeah, and lock-in. He played the first week of lock-in.
And he looked pretty weak, if I remember. Mind you, like, short period of time and, like, new team. So, like, there's a lot of things to consider there. But definitely night and day from what we saw just in January versus what we're seeing now. I thought he had a very, very good Lee Sin game against Immortals. I thought that he was incredibly influential on that game. And then to your point, Triple looked amazing. I thought his LeBlanc, he just totally outplayed Pobelter that game. Pobelter was non-existent. I mean, again, Pobelter needs to learn to hit his R on Lissandra. But besides the point, Triple was so influential. The one fight towards Dragon, he gets chunked out. He goes in a brush. He bases and TP flanks on CLG and absolutely cleans up the fight. I think that was where they won that game against CLG, and that is all on the shoulders of Triple. Just huge carry performance, and my God, did he dish out the damage on the LeBlanc. So, yeah, those 2 guys, to me, looked really, really good. And then a slight shout out as well for Diamond, because I thought his Blitzcrank was really, really good in that game. I think that was also against Immortals, if I remember right.
Yep.
And we know that he struggled a fair bit in spring, and so it was nice to see him come back and have a pretty good performance. So just a little shout out there.
Yeah, people were, I think, expecting the FlyQuest Academy roster to be subbed in, or at least a few of their academy pieces were going to be coming in, because it was clear over the last 3.5 weeks on their 10-game loss streak that the main roster was clearly struggling. It felt like there was no team synergy. People were making terrible individual mistakes and just like overall team mistakes in terms of like people going too deep or people getting caught out in side lane or whatever. And I think, with this whole situation with FlyQuest trading LICORICE and putting their whole academy roster in, it's proving to be worth it, this whole mental reset as people were talking about.
Well, something that's interesting too is that a couple of weeks ago they had put in the other three, so not NXI and not Triple. They had put in Kumo, Tomo, and Diamond, and they still looked like garbage.
Yeah,
honestly.
for one game.
And in that game, honestly, Jose Dioto and Palafox looked like garbage in that game. And so it does make you wonder how much just synergy does matter. Like, we know it matters, right? But to how much it matters, it definitely looked this weekend like it matters a lot, because they looked like a completely different team this weekend than we saw them in what was only one game, to be fair, but still a big difference nonetheless, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing that I was going to mention at the end of our CLG topic, but it also works here because Golden Guardians made a roster move this split, bringing in LICORICE. 8 of the 10 teams have now made some sort of roster move during the split, which I think is pretty crazy. Only 2 teams who haven't.
We're counting if CLG, if just to be clear.
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
If
well,
CLG, because yeah, okay.
I mean, it'd be pretty stupid to like make this video, announce it, and then not make any roster moves. Like, I don't know. But
oh, dude, CLG though.
True, it'd be hilarious. But yeah, the only 2 teams that haven't made any mid-split, roster changes are 100 Thieves and TSM. Every other team has made one, which is pretty surprising.
If CLG ends up not making a roster move, and it's like, this was a prank, haha. Oh my god,
man. April 1st was a long time ago.
Oh my god, what a nightmare that would be. They're just asking for it. Anyway, that would be really, really crazy. Anything else on any of those teams? It's interesting how interesting the 3 bottom teams have become in, what, a week or 2?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the bottom of our league, guys, and we've got a playoff race that's interesting between 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah, it's funny because it feels like the bottom of the league is, rising and the top of the league is falling. Or at least, the top spots are falling. Yeah.
Really, really strange. You want to get on to the other teams then?
Yeah. We'll just, give our thoughts at least on, the state for the rest of the teams. We're just going to go top down in terms of the standings of the teams we haven't talked about yet. First up, first place team, 100 Thieves.
A little bit of a stumble this week. So I think you might have mentioned this already, but if you didn't, I'm sorry. Their bot lane struggled a little bit in the first 2 games this weekend.
They got gapped hard.
They got gapped in, it was Golden Guardians and EG, right?
Yep.
Which, yeah, that's saying something, because I mean, this bot lane, in my opinion, was definitely up there for MVP talks, and they still are, right? You have one bad weekend, like, okay, let's not panic here. But I would say they came right back against TSM, and I thought that was probably one of the better games we've seen all split long, the TSM 100 Thieves game. I know TSM fans aren't going to be happy with how they performed, but even for a loss, I thought TSM actually performed pretty well in that game. So I thought that TSM 100 Thieves game was probably one of the better ones we've seen. And yeah, I mean, 100 Thieves came right back and looked quite good on it.
Yeah, it definitely kind of reaffirmed that nobody was really going to catch them, because should they have lost to TSM, I think there was that potential where TSM could have caught them. And if any of EG, Cloud9, and Team Liquid continued to pick up wins, and 100 Thieves, losing week by week, I think there was the possibility that we could see a different team at the top of the standings. But I think at this point, even though they did hit a bit of a bump in the road on Saturday, Sunday, dropping to EG and Golden Guardians, this is still a very strong team. They have been performing very, very well against the other top teams, which I think is most important when, looking for the best team and moving forward into playoffs in terms of how much confidence you have. And I still think that we'll see 100 Thieves at the top of the standings by the end of the regular season, and I think they will be most likely the favorites going into playoffs.
And even though they lost to two teams that are below them in the standings, EG and Golden Guardians just played well this week.
Yeah.
And so it's not to me like they lost to bad teams. Like, don't get me wrong, Golden Guardians should be a bad team, but the way we saw them play this weekend was not a bad team. And EG's been on a tear lately. They've looked great. And so I'm not all that worried. But it is two losses, and we saw them on like a huge winning streak before it. So it's something to think about, but it's no time for the panic button yet. The other thing that I want to point out is that Closer absolutely 1v9 the game against TSM. For
Yeah.
those wondering about the MVP talks, there's talk about Spica, there's talk about Closer. It's not a good look for Spica when you get gapped that hard. Closer had quite the pop-off performance, despite the fact that Spica still had a good weekend overall, I think. Closer was like, mine, you know?
Yeah, I really like that Olaf pick into the TSM comp where they had like Viego, Varus, Azir, and Nautilus, basically saying, we don't care about your CC. I'm gonna run through it. I thought the Olaf pick was really, really good. I really like that draft out of 100 Thieves. I'm really liking Aphelios in general. I think that champion is super, super strong. And like we said last week, I think there's really high skill expression with the champion.
Yeah.
And giving it to a player like FBI, who's really good.
It's just so much
usually
more
looks
fun to
good.
watch Aphelios than Poke Varus.
Yeah, I hate Poke Varus. That shit's
Like,
terrible.
Poke Varus can miss me with that.
Like, I liked it when it was like a thing that you could whip out. Like, oh, you'd whip out the Poke comp and you'd have Poke
Yeah.
Varus, and it was like a niche kind of thing. But now it's just like you pick it every game. You're pressing Q on wave and you press Q in team fights. Like, dude,
It's something
I
that's
don't care.
really boring when it's meta, man. It gets really, really stale when it's meta. It's like, yeah. Anyways, I'm not a big fan of it either. But yeah, 100 Thieves still at the top of my list, honestly. So I
Mhm.
don't think 100 Thieves fans need to worry too much. Actually, I even thought Someday had a pretty good weekend as well, which is for what it's worth. They're still just the best team. Anything else on 100 Thieves, or do we want to go TSM?
We'll move on to TSM. TSM kind of pulling a bit of a reverse CLG, whipping out a new comp and looking pretty terrible at it for the most part. They had two games where they had Power of Evil on Lee Sin mid, which was just, I don't even know what to say about this. While I think he had some decent performances not performances, well, he had some decent moments in the mid and late game with making like the flashy kick play with getting the priority target, into your team and getting a kill. I think for the most part, his Lee Sin was just really, really bad. Like, he was often falling super far behind in lane, wasn't having a whole lot of impact in team fights, often going in first and dying while trying to get that priority target. And I think if you take away like the couple flashy moments that he had a really bad weekend. I think he did kind of get lost in that 100 Thieves game because the map just started to fall to pieces around him. But yeah, really weird week out of TSM.
Was that an accidental pun?
It was an
or no?
unintentional pun, yes, but
Okay,
you
that's
mentioned it now, so yes, we may move on now. Continue.
Okay. The one thing that I'll say about Power of Evil on Lee Sin, so a couple of things actually. One, I believe it was on Double If's co-stream that I think he leaked something about Bjergsen saying like, I don't even play anymore and my Lee Sin would be better. Here's the thing with that. I don't mind if you're like, okay, we are at the top of the standings right now. We're in second place. We want to go into playoffs with more than one weapon. Like, everyone knows Power of Evil can always go back to control mages. I don't have any problem with them saying, let's try to give him something else and put some other games, put him on Lee Sin for some other games. You know what I'm saying? Give him some reps on a different kind of champion to build up that repertoire, if you will. I'm okay with that. But to your point, yeah, he didn't really look that great on the Lee Sin, but I'm not panicking yet because, again, we know he could still play the mages if he has to go back to that. The other thing that I'll say is that the one play that I think he got the most flack for was the one where he tried to kick Turtle into the team. He tried to kick Flash, but as he went to kick, that was where I mentioned earlier, Smoothie made a really nice peel with the Leona as he got his Zenith Blade on him and he locked him down, and so he wasn't able to do the flash play with it, and so he ended up just kicking Turtle away rather than into his team. That was just a little subtle thing that like it's hard to see in a big team fight, and so I don't know. To me, that was just a good play by Smoothie rather than a failed play by Power of Evil. With all of that said, I still think you're right. His Lee Sin is lackluster. He needs to get better with it. But again, just like 100 Thieves, I'm not panicking with TSM.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm panicking, but I definitely think there's more there's just more question marks, I think, moving forward. I think Spica, I would say actually he was the one guy who I thought had a really good weekend out of TSM despite the results. He absolutely 1v9'd the game against Golden Guardians, a game that they should have lost had it not been for Spica's heroics in that one team fight where Golden Guardians initially got a pick in a team fight and it was 5v4, and then Spica absolutely like obliterated two people instantly with the Diana combo. And I think, if not for Spica in the game against Golden Guardians absolutely popping off, I think TSM would have gone 0-3.
They lose that game without Spica. And I mentioned last week that I'm going to keep my eye on Spica because there's been all this MVP talk about him, and I don't think that he really should be in the MVP talks. But that is a game that's the kind of games you need to see out of an MVP. And so I really want to give Spica credit for that game because I totally think they lose that game if not for Spica 1v9ing it. The rest of the weekend, I didn't think he was all that crazy. Again, I was really keeping my eye on Spica this weekend. I didn't think he was all that nuts. He had a really nice Rumble ulti in the game against CLG. But to be honest, I mentioned this to you even. I think I mentioned this to you. CLG over and over and over again kept tunneling into that one narrow corridor walking towards Baron, in between like blue buff and mid lane kind of thing, the very narrow corridor there. And you're asking to be Rumble ulted. If you're playing against a Rumble there, you can't keep going. You need to take a different route to go to Dragon Pit. And CLG did it over and over and over again, and Spica only laid it on them that one time. And so I thought there was other opportunities that he had to have better ultimates on Rumble, and I didn't see them. So even though I think he had a good weekend, I thought that he could have played better in the CLG game specifically. And so, yeah, I don't know. I did want to give him a big shout out, though, because I thought he 1v9 the Diana game versus Golden Guardian.
Yeah, moving forward, I think TSM, they're an alright spot. I think they're not looking like amazing or anything. They still are the second place team, although all of Team Liquid, Cloud9, and EG are now only one win behind them. I think it's very possible, to be honest, that, TSM could actually end up at the bottom. But I think, at the same time, they could also end up at the top of those three teams. So I think, honestly,
well,
from spots 2 to 5, I think all of those teams right now are about on the same level, and I think you could see any variation of that going into playoffs, and I wouldn't be too surprised, despite any heroics from Cloud9 or Team Liquid at the end of the split.
Well, I don't want to discount the idea that they're only one game behind first as well. So
they're 2 games behind.
Oh, Standings is saying that 25 and 11, 100 Thieves, 24 and 12 TSM.
Are they 24?
That's what it says on LOL Esports anyways.
And then, sorry, does that mean all of Cloud9, TL, and EG are 2 wins behind?
2 wins behind TSM. Here, I'll send you I'll snip it right now.
Okay, I had it wrong then. Well, then TSM's in better shape than I thought they were. There you go.
Yeah, so that was something that I meant to bring up when we were talking about it before, is that I actually do think like TSM, there's still only 1 game behind 100 Thieves, and every team has 9 games left to play. Not to mention they all have to play each other. There's still a full round robin. So TSM's going to get a crack at 100 Thieves again before the split is over. And so maybe TSM does finish up there. Last thing I'll say on TSM is I watched their bot lane this weekend, and I thought that they were finally having more of an influence on the game, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But so often this year, I've seen them just AFK lane and slowly lose out in lanes, and I didn't feel that this weekend. I actually thought that even against 100 Thieves, even though they lost that game, and I think they lost lane as well, there was some really nice plays out of the bot lane. I thought Sword Art looked a lot better, and so wanted to give some little bit of shout outs to their bot lane for finally actually having an influence on the game and doing something. So I thought they looked a lot better as well.
Yeah, just to quickly talk about the game, because I think, from the naked eye, it would look like 100 Thieves just like completely railed TSM in that game, but it was actually a really competitive early game with both teams making plays back and forth. And I think, the 100 Thieves comp just reached a point where Silas and Olaf were just like running over people in the mid game, and those are 2 champions that do that. So yeah,
we saw one of the most disgusting Nautilus hooks I've ever seen in that game. And the top lane,
yeah, just go watch the game. When was it? It was like maybe like 13, 14 minutes in like top lane fight where Sword Art hooks.
I don't know.
Like I don't even know. Like Sword Art was standing like by the tower and hooked a guy like almost in the lane. Like at the middle
Nautilus
of
Hook has always been gross. We know the hitbox is disgusting. That was like extra disgusting. Like I could not believe that thing hit. And the thing is they ended up losing that fight. It's a hook onto the Aphelios, onto the enemy AD carry. Like that should be a team fight win. But then Closer was like, nah, man. And
yeah,
Closer
he
just
just
ran over
he,
them.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
But
we got
anyways.
EG up next. EG, they've been
What an exciting run this team is on. They've won how many in a row? A lot?
they've won a lot in a row,
I think
but
8.
they're yeah
I think it's 8, but I don't know.
yeah.
They've
Well,
won a lot.
I'm pretty sure that they're 8-1 in the second round robin of summer split. I'm pretty sure they went 8-1 in that second round robin.
I feel like I could find this, what kind of streak they're on. There are 8 in a row is what they've won.
Oh.
They've won 8 in a row. Yeah. Okay. Where do you want to start with this one? We should probably start in the bot lane, right? There was a lot of controversy that Danny and Ignar didn't get Player of the Week.
Yeah,
Let's
I
start
mean,
there.
for me, the main reason why this team is playing so well is strictly because of Danny and Ignar.
I completely agree.
Not
100%.
to take credit away from Sven Skaren, Impact, or Jizuke, but I don't think that it's been them, that have been making leaps and bounds in terms of like improvements. I think it's just straight up been Danny and Ignar are just like 1v9 in games, and that has been the main thing for me. Danny is really looking like a top, like I think Danny's one of the top ADCs in the LCS right now. I said it.
So the one area where I think I differ from you a little bit is that, and I think people are hanging on too much to the start of the split where Jizuke was running it down, because I think over the last 8 games in their win streak, he's actually looked quite good. And whereas I don't think the same for Impact, and I haven't really thought the same for Svenskeren minus, though, I do think actually Svenskeren had a good past weekend, though. But overall, I don't think Svenskeren's been anything special. I actually wouldn't be surprised if we see Contracts as the starter by the end of the split. I'll say that. There's your hot take. Yeah, no, Danny has looked very, very good. He was so, dude, the Cloud9 game, he was so just in their face, zero fucks given, just autoing over and over again because he was so far ahead. He had the Bloodthirster so he could lifesteal any trades. And he realized that Cloud9 didn't really have any way to engage on him. You had Blabber, and that was, I think, it.
Yep.
And so he took advantage of that and was just an absolute boss in that game. He had the Quadra that took a while to get to happen on the Samira game, but nonetheless was still kind of gross. What else did he play? There was one more. Was it Aphelios?
Yeah, Aphelios against Hunter T, where he was just stomping.
Yeah. Oh, he had a really nice ulti in the one fight, actually. I think it's over towards Dragon. Anyways, Danny looks really, really good. For sure an upgrade since last split. I'm sorry, Deathly, but like, oh my god. And for sure an upgrade since the start of the split, because at the start of the split, I wouldn't say that he was doing too much. He was kind of just there, but it was like, it's okay, he's a rookie, he's still learning. But now, holy shit, man. I do think that he had a better weekend than LICORICE. The controversy, for the record, of what I'm talking about was the coach of EG, Peter Dunn, said something along the lines of like, guys, I never usually comment on this stuff, but it's crazy to me that neither Ignar or Danny got Player of the Week this week. And I think he's kind of right, honestly.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I find with like Player of the Weeks or whatever is they like to pick sometimes a player who had like a good storyline. And I think that was the main reason why I think they went with LICORICE over Danny, was mainly just because like, oh, LICORICE joined new team, played really well, Player of the Week kind of thing. Like, I think people are also extra upset that Danny didn't get it, was because I think he was also deserving of it the previous week. And so I think if it was just like a 1 week thing for Danny, and it was like Danny or LICORICE, I think it's completely fine to give it to LICORICE. But I think where the Danny fans are a bit angry was because I think he was deserving of it last week and easily could have won it. Same with this week, easily could have won it. And personally, like you, I would have picked Danny.
I actually don't know if I would have gone Danny or Ignar. I think I actually would have gone Ignar. I guess it's a good time to talk about him. Regardless, they both looked fantastic, but holy shit, Ignar showed up this weekend, man. This was the Ignar that we were looking for. His Rakan, this is like vintage Ignar Rakan, because there was so many times where he's finding that flank, and that's what we used to talk about all the time last year, was Ignar on the Rakan, hiding in a brush, not being found, finding the flank, finding the great engage. His Rakan was amazing. And then so was his Thresh. His Thresh looked really, really good as well. You could go either way. And the other thing about the Player of the Week talk, or the MVP of the week, whatever they call it,
Player of the Week.
There was so many that you could have gone with, man.
Like, for sure.
And so it didn't bother me at all that it was LICORICE, because I thought he did play to the level of a Player of the Week. Same with Triple. Same with Danny. Same with Ignar. So it's like whatever, man. It's you get a little fucking trophy, like you get like whatever, man. They both looked great, and that is a good sign for EG. I don't think anyone needs to worry about Player of the Week awards when your team is on an 8-game win streak and your bot lane's looking fantastic, your mid lane's looking good. You've got two junglers to choose from. I think they've both looked good as of late. And the thing is, even though Impact, I think he struggled this split. I have no problem with expecting him to bounce back and look like a solid top laner like he's done his whole fucking career.
Yeah.
So EG is in a really good spot right now, guys. Really good spot. And yeah, I don't know. They're looking better than C9. They're looking better than TL, and I think they're looking better than TSM. They're looking like the number 2 team right now.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
crazy to say from where they were right back in spring.
it's funny because when the games were happening this weekend, me and Blue Jay were talking about and said like we did our updated power rankings 1 week too early, because I think honestly, if you go look at them now, I think they would be significantly different.
Yeah, I'd have them
everywhere.
number 2 as the power rank.
I would have them too as well. I think it just to quickly, I would have like 100 T1, EG2, TSM 3, maybe TL4, C9 5. CL and C9 are definitely 4 or 5. And then you probably put
C9 lower.
I think I would put Golden Guardian 6. Then I'd put FlyQuest 7, Immortals 8, Dig 9, CLG 10.
I would definitely put Cloud9 below Team Liquid. So when you talked about that, no doubt in my mind is Cloud9 worse than Team Liquid right now. The other ones are more difficult because even though recently FlyQuest and Golden Guardians rather have looked better than C9, like I don't know if I'm ready to do that.
No,
yet,
I can't do that. Like
Yeah.
C9, if C9's 5, like it'd be like it'd be close between I've Golden Guardian 6, Fly 7, Immortals 8, Dig 9, CLG 10.
Anyways, yeah, it would look significantly different to your point. Seeing as we're talking about C9, did you want to get into them? Was there anything else on EG that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think Ignar, as you kind of mentioned, I think he's really flying under the radar just because of how well
Yes.
Danny is playing. You know, you look at that, you know, his recon performance you're kind of talking about in the C9 game. You know, Cloud9 were actually kind of clawing their way back into that game slowly but surely because they'd gotten about 2 to 3 like skirmishes in a row where they came out on top and were kind of not necessarily evening the gold out, but they were slowing the sort of snowball that was happening in the early game. And then, like you mentioned, Ignar, you know, when it came to those like set objective fights, you would see him get into a flank position and C9 would go for their engage and it would kind of fail. And then Ignar would just like flank him, get multiple people with the knock-up charm, and EG, you know, pretty handily won that game.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, EG looks good, and they look like they've got a shot to go to Worlds, and that's the weird thing, is that there's just so many teams that have a shot of going to Worlds right now, which is really nice because I think most years, I don't think there's normally, at this point in the season, I don't think there's normally like 5 reasonable teams to go to Worlds, right?
Yeah, not even just go to Worlds, just like contend for the title.
Yeah, that
Like,
too.
I think
That
you could
too.
say, I think you could pick any of the top 5 teams in the league right now and say, I think this team's going to win. I'd be like, okay, let me hear your argument, because I think that's a completely fair statement to make.
Yeah. I am with you there.
We
All
got
right, let's go Cloud9.
Yeah.
Who we flaming first?
Perks, because he's playing like I play when I play solo queue, and I just like go aggro lane, don't care about the jungler, make bad engage, look bad.
Yeah, Perks looks really, really bad right now, guys. And this goes back. I've always talked about this. It bothers me when like players don't get criticism just because of their star power and their name. And this is a perfect example again, where Perks is fucking running it down, and no one seems to care. Like they do the power rankings. This was before the week, to be fair. And Perks is like, I don't even. He was like towards the top in the power rankings for.
It was for highs, he was number 2, which is completely outrageous, and for Kaizen's, he was 4, which I think I somewhat agree with.
That one's a little bit more iffy, but just 2, no shot. Even before this weekend, no fucking shot, man. He's been so inconsistent. Don't get me wrong. He has some really, really good performances. He does. But you're not telling me he's the second best mid this split. There's no shot of that. He is dying way too often, and not even just dying, like dying in things like avoidable deaths. like really avoidable. If we want to talk more recently, he gets solo killed, like you mentioned earlier. There's the TF game where he's like, do you remember he's in like the top brush and then he just
Dude,
walks out of it and shows himself
it
and
it,
dies randomly?
it wasn't even
That was
that. Like,
so weird.
he had pressed R about like 5 seconds before he started that initial channel and could have left at any moment, but then just decided to walk out of a bush, then channel alt and get interrupted. Because like that people were like saying like, oh, why aren't you ulting in the bush? Well, it's like that wasn't even the problem. He ulted 5 seconds earlier, getting the vision of the whole entire enemy team, saw that they were walking up to river. Maybe I guess he thought he could just like run it out, but like he pressed alt, so just fucking alt.
It was like, I'm gonna solo flank or something. I don't know. It made no sense. The point is, he's actually just running it down in some of these deaths, and it's costing them a lot. And if we're gonna talk about running it down and costing a lot, we gotta talk about Blabber too, because he's doing the same shit. Uh, he's in love with Crab, and I know it sounds like we're just memeing, but it's what we see every fucking game. So I mean, what else is there to say, man? They're going for these fights they have no business taking.
Yeah, while I definitely think these plays are super, super int, I don't also kind of agree with the argument that it's like it's solely Blabber's fault that they're going for these plays and they're failing. Because
I completely agree.
like we talk about when we watch the games, like why is nobody calling these plays off? Like
Thank you.
the first one against Evil Geniuses where they go for the topside crab, like it was a 3v2. Like Perks and Blabber were the only guys coming to defend the crab. Fudge was late on the rotation, a pretty similar situation to what happened like all the way back at MSI when Fudge is like late on a rotation, they get outnumbered and they just die. And it's just we are seeing this thing over and over and over, and it feels like just like we were at MSI, Cloud9 feels like they're in a position where like, oh, we gotta fight for these crabs no matter what. It's crab or lose. Like, dude, it's not like you can sack a crab. Like I know Blabber's like a super aggressive player and likes to overpower his opponent through like contesting objectives and like going for these early skirmishes, and teams can kind of just get a read on that and be like, hey, this guy's gonna do this no matter what. So like push your lanes. Like let's just play for these crabs, and if they int, they int, and if they don't, guess what? We get the crab.
So I was in Meteos' chat watching. I was watching Meteos' co-stream during that game, and I know the answer to this, but I wanted Meteos to acknowledge it because there were so many people in chat saying like, "Why is Blabber making this call?" And it's like that's a good question to ask. But like you said, I was asking Meteos, like Meteos, why is no one calling this guy off? I'm like, I was trying to get him to notice in chat because so many people are just blaming Blabber, like you mentioned, and it's like anyone can call this off and realize this is crack mode. Like there's no way you're taking these fights. You could see it when it's happening. You're like, this is gonna be bad. This is not something you want to contest right now. This Renekton's gonna fuck you up, and of course it does. So yeah. Anyways, to your point, Blabber, I don't know why he's calling for it, and even as aggressively as he's pinging, Perks has a brain. He can use it and know that that is not a fight they win. Everyone knows that the other top laner is running TP, so even if Jace is rotating down, Jace was nowhere near close enough to be able to engage the fight just yet. The Renekton's going to destroy you every time, and yeah, that is very uncharacteristic. And I tweeted out something along the lines of like, I've never seen C9 look so visibly tilted, because there are just plays that like this makes no sense. You don't need to be a pro to know that what they're doing is just troll, and so uncharacteristic of like what Cloud9 was our number one team last split. Like they should know they can or can't take these fights, and it just seems like they're just taking them and flipping the game no matter what at Scuttle.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like if we're gonna play the blame game, I definitely think it's primarily Perks and Blabber. While I don't think that the other players are playing perfect by any means, I still think they're having relatively solid performances across the board, and even on a game-to-game basis, we're seeing really, really pop-off games from Fudge. Well, I think, yeah, he's had some int games this split. I think for the most part, he's been pretty solid, and I think he continues to be Cloud9's best player at the current stage. Like, if I had to pick a best player on Cloud9 right now, current performances, dating back to the start of the split, I would probably pick Fudge.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely, you'd pick Fudge. He actually has had good games.
Yeah,
I think Fudge has been more good than bad. Let's put it that way.
It's hard to get a gauge on Sven because this is only his third week back, and he hasn't really had a lot of impact. At least this week he didn't. I think in week 5 he definitely did and had a pretty decent week. And I think on the flip side, Vulcan is kind of just there because the map is like getting shit on everywhere else, and like he's just like, oh well, now I'm playing engaged support. I go in and die for the team.
Something else I actually want to defend Fudge for is because there was one gank. I don't remember what the game was. It might have been the same game. Doesn't matter. Anyways, what happens is Fudge dies like around the 3.5 minute mark, where like generally you know that the jungler is going to be pathing like going to gank after his camps are cleared. And Meteos went back and he looked at the pro view of Blabber to see like what's going on, like why is he not pushed out? And it actually looked like Blabber gave false information as to where the jungler was, and so Fudge thought that he could play safe in lane and play a little bit more aggressive.
Oh,
And he ended up getting ganked.
that was in the EG game.
Oh, was it? Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
remember which
and
game it
then
was.
that was the whole point, was he dies in that gank. Fudge then has to TP back to the wave with the wave getting shoved against him, and then Cloud9 goes for this crab fight when Impact has first move on Renekton. It's just like, dude, it's similar to when Cloud9 was having their big meltdown at the end of, let me start with this. I don't think they're having a meltdown per se, but when Cloud9 was having their meltdown in summer 2020, similar to right now, they're just skipping a lot of steps. They're taking fights without numbers, or even at like equal numbers with worse, champions. Worse champions, I mean, like relative to the state of the game. Like, you don't really want to be taking crab fights against a Renekton at like 3-4 minutes. And then also, they're just skipping a ton of steps in terms of, vision control and like setting up team fights. Like, they're often, the team actually getting to the fight last and then still opting into team fights when they don't have vision control and they don't have, control of the objective. It's just a weird look out of Cloud9. Obviously, I think the copium takes are going to come in terms of like playoff perks and like, best of fives and whatnot. And while I think, some people are underrating what, how best of fives look and what experienced teams, really gain out of those best of fives, it's still a bit nerve-wracking when the team is just playing so bad.
It feels like this whole split, this whole podcast has been copium takes for Cloud9, hasn't it? It's been like a month straight of like everything's going to be okay, but eventually things need to get okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't do this forever.
Yeah, like it felt like there was getting somewhat okay after last week. They had 2 solid wins, and they had an game against TSM where the game got a bit fucked off of level 1, and people were saying like, going to this week, they got FlyQuest, they got Dignitas, and then they play EGs. Like, surely they'll get the 3-0, but no. They lose to FlyQuest. They beat Dignitas pretty handily, but then they get just crushed by EG.
There's 3 more weeks left, right, in the split, and that to me is not a lot of time. Now, mind you, it is still possible that they turn things around, they start to look better. But if they don't, and they end up just falling in the standings, like, you could actually have them finish 4-5, and then you have to play another like good team, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, worst case scenario, you finish 5, and your first playoff series, you'll have to play most likely then Team Liquid.
Right, and
which would be either Team Liquid or EG. Team Liquid, a team that is just naturally going to be very strong, and EG, a team that Cloud9 consistently is losing to throughout all of 2021.
Yeah, and maybe even TSM if EG and Team Liquid get really hot. I don't think that's likely, but just it's a possibility that TSM falls a little bit if those other teams get super hot as well. And all those teams, like, if you're Cloud9, you don't want to be playing Team Liquid, EG, or TSM in your first round of playoffs. You want to go up against Dignitas.
Yeah, like, you really want to be that number 3 seed and get that free series off of Dignitas right at the start.
Like, your 1 or 2 seeds, honestly, they're a buy, but like, is your 3rd seed a buy this split?
Yes.
JNT?
If you're going up against Dignitas, it is.
Isn't that kind of interesting how like finishing 3rd could be more valuable than 1 or 2 because you get that 1 series out of the way and like you get, what I'm trying to say here?
Yes, I do.
You have to show your drafts. Like, I know that. You have to show your drafts and stuff, but
yes and no.
There's still that argument to be made, right? It's an interesting thought anyway. Okay. Okay, the last thing I'll say on Cloud9 is that their drafts are also really fucking weird, where they're drafting the full AD carry comp where you have no engage against that was against EG. Yeah, like, you could see Danny just sitting in your face perma-firing because he's like, you have no way to engage on me outside of Blabber, and even still he's not that afraid of him. That was a weird draft, man, and you got to realize when you're drafting like that, that's not the way to be playing the game, especially with how weak you've looked as of late. You should be playing comps that are easier to play because you've been making a lot of mistakes lately, and you can't play these comps that if you fall behind, you can't do anything. And that's basically what they're running with that kind of comp.
Yeah, part of it's just like a confidence thing. Like, yeah, sure, you want to be trying out these new comps, or you want to be playing these potentially harder to execute comps as practice going into the playoffs. But like, at some point, you just got to like play some easy stuff, get some wins, and just like get some confidence under you, going forward.
Roll with the Bronzodia. Okay,
Yeah.
anything else, or let's go TL?
Nope. We got Team Liquid up next. I wouldn't say they're in the same boat as Cloud9 in terms of performance, but at the same time, they're not far off from them. They're only 10-8 in summer split, whereas Cloud9's 9-9. And for whatever reason, Jenkins is still playing games. Don't know why.
Yeah.
From the 2 games that we saw out of Alfari, he's absolutely doggy dicking Fake God in top in that Gangplank game. I remember tweeting this out. Like, they probably panned top lane maybe like 4 or 5 times in the first 8 minutes of the game. But anytime they're just panning top lane, like, you can just see how good Alfari is. Like, his laning is so nice. His trading is nice. The way he plays the game is nice. He's just nice.
He's better. Like, we've acknowledged that, we know that. But I will say that Jenkins has had really good GP performances as well, and has dogged people with the GP specifically. Regardless, though, I think we all know that Alfari is the better player. It is really weird that they're splitting games. I don't really know what that's about. In his interview, post-game interview, Alfari, I think this was after the Friday games, Alfari did say that he only started playing with the team like 2 weeks ago. And so maybe there's that we're trying to ease him back into it argument. I don't really know what that's about. But Latigris had asked him, like, have you been like watching scrims and have you been with the team since the start of it? And he's like, no, I just started scrimming like a week or 2 ago. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of strange.
And if that's the case, like, you need to get this guy in there playing games. Like, I don't care if you think like, Jenkins, like, dude, like, Alfari is the best player on the team.
Yeah, it's not.
Get
Yeah,
games
it's not
on him,
even
please.
that Jenkins is bad. It's that Alfari's good, and that's where you want to get him back to that level that he was in spring, where he's absolutely dominating people. Because even if he struggles a little bit, so what? Get him the reps, get him back in there, so that he can build himself back up to the player that we know he can be. And if I'm a Team Liquid fan, I'm a little bit frustrated about that, because even though I like Jenkins, like we said, I'll say it again, we know Alfari's better. Get him in there. Get him these reps. Get him going again, because he will 1v9 games if he gets that many the opportunity anyway. What do you think about J Money?
Who's J Money?
There's another thing that Alfari mentioned in the post game interview, that him and Jensen, aka J Money, are gonna make a mixtape.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so Jensen is now J Money. J Money on the LeBlanc looked pretty damn good against Dignitas. Couple of things though. 1, it's Dignitas, and 2, Yusui just went and solo killed him. He was 16 Kassadin, so it's like whatever. But overall, I thought Jensen still looked really good. I've said this a million times that his LeBlanc looks good, and this is a guy I want to see. This is a champion I want to see him play. Up until that point where he got solo killed by Yusui, yeah, Jensen looked really, really fucking good. So.
No champion survives level 16 Kassadin.
Yes, I know. I'm just memeing a little bit. But yeah. Just because Jensen was like 4-0, so he's popping off in that game, and then he gets shut down and gives like a 900 gold shutdown over to the level 16 Kassadin. But don't worry, because Dignitas is like, oh, it's fine. We'll TP mid. Rather than split and apply pressure where no one can answer me because I'm a level 16 Kassadin. Nah, let's not do that. Never mind me going to spend the 1,000 gold that I just got from killing the other carry. No. Let me TP mid and just run it down and just lose the game.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say about Jensen is his Viego's pretty bad.
Yeah, there is a noticeable difference of when Jensen is on a mage versus not a mage. Very similar to PoE, kind of, honestly.
Well, I think his Lee Sin's like not bad, but I think his Viego is bad.
His Lee Sin did get better as the split went on. That is true.
I just think his Viego is bad. Like, it's becoming a bit of a meme at this point, but like.
So hold on, the Viego game though, that was the game where Golden Guardians absolutely just gapped them, right?
Yeah. But still, he's like, it's his worst champion this split. He's like 1-4 on it across 5 games. No more Viego for Jensen. It's getting nerfed again. It's getting nerfed on 11.5, which I assume would be the playoff patch. So hopefully, for Team Liquid's sake, they don't have to be playing Jensen. They don't have to be picking Viego mid for Jensen.
Yeah, maybe your wish will be granted. Perhaps. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. I don't really have much else to say about Team Liquid.
All's right.
They're gonna get better.
They're in 4th place
if
right
they get
now.
their players back. Yeah, it's so strange because we, again, like we mentioned last week, we don't know what's happening with Armeo slash Santorin. And to me, that is a big factor. I know other people that doesn't bother them as much that Armeo's in. I think Santorin opens up to you be able to play a lot more things. I think that you have to put Armeo on your Sejuani and your it's not coming to me.
Polar
Anyways, Volibear, thank you. Yes.
Okay. I just
Yes.
named a champion. I didn't know what you were saying.
No, it is the Volibear. It is the Volibear.
Okay.
Those are the champions that you do need to put him on because you don't want to put him on your hard carries. Because I just don't really trust putting the game in his hands, especially when you've got Alfari and Jensen and I guess Tactical as well. Like you don't need to be, but I think there's a little bit of flexibility you get in draft by having Santorin back in. But the issue is that if Santorin's still sick, then there's that time that it's going to take for him to get back up to his level, and that's the worrying sign for Team Liquid, honestly.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Unfortunate. Waiting for J Money to drop that mixtape with Alfari. Let's go Dignitas now.
Yeah, Dignitas, huh?
Yeah. You had a level 16 Cassidon and you couldn't close out a game.
Dude, like you literally just said, he kills LeBlanc in a side lane, gets almost 1,000 gold shutdown, and then just chooses to like TP and take some random fight mid lane when they're like scaling on them.
That makes no sense.
What the fuck is that?
That was so I don't even want to say solo queue. That was just bronze.
That's
Never
what I
mind
thought you were
solo,
gonna say was bronze.
like it was bronze though. Like you
No,
should
it
know
was.
that you could just split. No one can answer you, man. Yeah, they're like, let's A-Ram, TP's mid, dies, gives up the game. That was fucking weird. But I mean, aside from that, I think we've already said that I think you're with me on this one. Stop me if I'm wrong, J&T, but I think Celico's better. And the more I see
Yeah,
Yusui play,
he's terrible.
the more I'm convinced that he ain't ready for LCS yet.
Sorry, Tom
Mind
Shu.
you, I do think, yeah, man, yeah, poor Tom Shu. I do think that honestly, I still think Acadian is their biggest problem. Yeah, I mentioned this last week. I don't like his style. It's very predictable, and you fall behind in the jungle by ganking so much. Even if you do get a kill, you're not getting that much advantages. You're not getting that much of an advantage when you're giving up all of your camps. So it's like it's not that. Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't think Acadian had a bad week. I thought this was his best week that we've seen
It is
from him.
probably his. Yeah, it is.
But
it is.
jungle is still a problem for this team. Yeah. There's honestly
not really much.
Yeah, there's just really not a whole lot to talk about with this team. I think they definitely are benefiting from the wins that they got in the spring split in terms of their standing, but at the same time they're also benefiting a little bit in terms of the consistency of their roster because yes, while they've made a bunch of roster moves, they haven't since like week 2 or since the start of week 3. Whereas a lot of these other teams at the bottom of the table have been making a lot of moves and are clearly on like a bit of a plummet, and Dignitas has kind of like just stayed neutrally bad. So like they're gonna make playoffs. They're most likely gonna be the 6th seed with Immortals' recent performance, and they're gonna get absolutely clapped up by whoever that 3 seed is. Whether it's Cloud9, whether it's Team Liquid, whether it's DSM, whether it's EG, 3-0 go next.
I'm still Afro Stan. I think he's still been good, and I think that's the only way that you could really look at Dignitas.
I hope for his sake that he's on a different team, or Dignitas gets Saligo back in there, and they get a good jungler for next split.
I know CLG probably wants a new support, huh? CLG Afro?
No, don't send him there.
CLG Afro coming near you, 2022. Okay, anyways, let's move on because I don't got much to say about Dig. They're looking bad and I'm sad.
And now I'm sad because Immortals.
Yeah, your turn to be sad.
Dude,
where do you want to start?
They're just playing so bad all around. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just all bad. I'm not seeing any good.
Okay, well, hold on. I do see some good because I still have faith in Xerxes. I think he's been good. I have faith in Insanity half the time. He had a good game against Jensen. He's Tristan. He got the solo kill in the mid lane. He got some advantages there. You know what? One of the problems is I see with Immortals is that it always seems to be either Insanity or Race where they get ahead or they get fed a lot of kills. And then they just end up getting caught at awful times, and they throw games just by getting caught randomly. It's honestly more often Rays, but I think this past weekend it was Insanity on the Tristana. I don't know if I'm confusing this week with that last week. Was it this week on the Tristana
You played
around
Tristana this
Crest?
week, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know,
Around
but
Crest
I
where he
don't
got
remember
caught?
the specific play you're talking about, but
Yeah, I think it was this week, but I'm sorry if I'm confusing last week. Anyways, it does seem like it's one of these players that's always getting caught in a really crucial moment, and then the game completely swings, despite the fact that they get some early advantages. That's a problem that hasn't seemed to fix itself. Race on the Zigs, I think, awful.
oh,
Um,
gee. You have
okay,
Insanity's Resident Six player. Come on, man.
yeah. This is actually I was watching the co-stream like I mentioned, and this is one where Sneaky pointed this out, so I'm gonna give props to Sneaky. But in the one team fight around Dragon, Race doesn't put down his E once as Ziggs, which is like, first of all, it's a really good zoning tool. Second of all, you can peel for yourself. You can stop people from getting on top of you with your E. Like, you need to use your abilities. And he just got fully engaged on without even using his E. Like, that's really bad, especially if you're positioning around Dragon. At least throw that thing down so you can zone people, so that you're not giving them all of River to work with. You could cut off about half of River almost with his E. And like, I don't know, it just seems like Race didn't know what he was doing on that champion.
Yeah, it just seems like they're suffering a bit from their original problem back in Spring Split, and where like one player is just having a really bad game each game,
Yeah.
and it's just super difficult to pick up wins consistently when you're having to plug holes in one lane or in one spot every single game.
Yeah.
Like
And it
Revenge,
doesn't
Revenge had a really bad game against FlyQuest. Xerxes had not so great of a game against Team Liquid, but I mean, a lot of players didn't have a good game against Team Liquid, like Raze and
yeah.
what's his face, Revenge, and also had another bad game against EG.
They don't look like, I still have faith that this team will take games off of teams above them in the standings. I just don't think it's going to happen very often. But like, you do see some solid gameplay every once in a while. We just haven't seen it on a consistent basis. And so I
Yeah.
think Immortals is pretty much set where they are in the standings. I think they're just going to finish 7. Well, I
Yeah.
guess maybe they could catch Dignitas if Dignitas really slumps. But right now they're 3 games back. And so it's kind of hard to gain 3 games in a 9-game span. But it is possible.
Yeah, it's hard. It's doable, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think
Or they would have to fall 3 games for FlyQuest to catch up to them. FlyQuest is 3 wins behind them at the moment.
I mean,
so
that again,
it's possible.
unlikely, but possible.
Yeah. I don't really got much more to say about IMT.
Yeah, Sag. I'm shifting my current. Well, I'm not. I'm not trying to sound bandwagony, but I'm shifting my stonks from Immortals to Golden Guardians because I've been a Golden Guardians believer.
Keep the faith.
A bit. Well, I'm not saying I'm not completely done with Immortals, but in terms of like, do I have more of hype and faith going into towards like end of split and playoffs? It'll probably be Golden Guardians.
I'm not giving up on CLG. I got 3 more weeks.
I have completely given up on CLG. They can go fuck off.
When I say given up, I mean my fandom. I mean, I don't have faith in them being great.
Even if I had any fandom in CLG, it would be out the window 2 weeks ago.
I committed to CLG for this year, and I will get through the last 3 weeks cheering for this team to pick up some W's, hoping to scrape in the playoffs. But I'm not counting on it. Actually, on that note, so a couple of weeks ago, I had a take that I looked back on it when I was, because I sometimes I rewatch our episodes to see like how I thought I'd blah blah blah. Anyways, I was rewatching one of our episodes, and there was one take that I did that I was like, I don't even like my own take. Like, why did I even make this take? And it was the one about FlyQuest even wanting to make playoffs. You remember this?
Oh yeah.
I was like, I'm not even sure if they want to make playoffs, and I was like, that's a stupid thing to say because these guys literally commit their careers to being competitive. So, like, obviously they want to make playoffs. And then in the LICORICE interview that comes out, LICORICE goes on about, like, yeah, I don't even know if I want to make playoffs if we were just going to 0-3. And I'm like, what the hell? LICORICE basically confirmed what I thought was an awful take in his interview with Travis Gafford. And so I was like, man, like, okay. Maybe it wasn't that bad of a take. Some teams just don't want to make playoffs because they know they're just going to get or they're just going to go 0-3 and just get clapped.
Anyway. I mean, maybe, but yeah, it definitely is like sad when you're just like slowly like snowballing out of control in terms of like we can't win, we don't know what we're doing, our team's playing bad, and sometimes you are in a situation where you just like want the season to be over and just like move on.
Yeah, I legit when I rewatched the thing and I looked at that take, I was like, I'm waiting for someone to say how much of a dumb take this was. Any moment now, I'll have to check the YouTube comments and be like, Blue Jay, that sucks. Obviously, they want to make playoffs, but there was no one. And then, sure enough, Licorice was like, "Yeah, I don't even know if I wanted to make playoffs, and we're just gonna go 0-3." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" Okay, all right. Um, but anyways, that's enough to say on that. Let's go Popoff Beansoup, right?
Yeah. Popoff Beansoup, Popoff. I had triple. That guy
Okay,
was absolutely smurfing it.
styling on him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think in their matchup against Cloud9, he did exactly what he was supposed to do and completely shit stomp Perks in the Lucian versus TF matchup. That matchup is super, super good for Lucian. You should win it at least like 9 times out of 10, although Perks is still like a very quality star player. Triple wasn't afraid of the moment and dicked him down.
Yeah,
That was the game I was most impressive with. I guess also, the LeBlanc against Lissandra performance was also pretty impressive, considering like in a vacuum, it's LeBlanc's worst matchup because Lissandra can really lock you down and prevent you from doing a lot of your damage. When you W in as LeBlanc, Lissandra just like presses W or presses R and just completely cucks you. But Triple, again, I think he did a really good job in that game, just like navigating the team fights in general in terms of like picking his spots to go in and, just playing an overall really good game.
Yeah, the one thing we didn't mention is the way FlyQuest played this past weekend was how they played really, really aggressive. They weren't afraid to try to make plays, and maybe that's something that comes with having no pressure on you because no one expects you to win anyways. Regardless, it was nice to see. Mark Zimmerman on Hotline talked about it as being like an LPL style that they played, maybe not in skill level, but the style of just playing aggressive and going for plays, and how it's really fun to watch them. I think he's 100% right. They were really fun to watch this weekend, and it was such a feels good man story because God did we need that after what was really just a rough split for FlyQuest. So poggers for FlyQuest fans. I went with Danny and Ignar. Just the EG bot lane. They looked fucking great. And because they didn't get their player of the week awards, which they obviously either one of them could have, I thought that they deserved the shout out for it. I don't need to say much more because we went in earlier with what or how good they looked. But yeah, this bot lane is really carrying EG, and I'll leave it at that. I think they are currently the best lane for EG, and yeah. Anyways,
sure.
good things to come if they continue to play the way they're playing.
Yep.
Beansoup, go.
Although I think the obvious answers are like you get to pick a lot of the CLG players. You could pick a Dig player. You could pick maybe somebody on TSM. I'm gonna go with Revenge because I thought he really did have like a really bad week. His Akali game on Sunday was just bad. His Lulu game wasn't that great either. He got solo killed. And got ganked a bunch. Yeah, he's been like a player who I've always been a little bit nervous about for Immortals because he does have very high highs and has low lows. And I think if you're looking to be a consistent team moving into playoffs and like want to try to contend or want to take games off top teams, you can't have these like 50-50s of int the game.
Yeah, no, it's totally fair. The thing is, I still think Revenge has gotten better as the year has gone on, but there has been a little bit of regression lately, and so I think the Beansoup is totally warranted. For me, I went off the whatever, and I went with CLG's van because I thought that was the funniest, dinkiest looking thing. For those that didn't see it, TSM made sure to tweet this out. They got their nice Cadillac. That thing looks shiny and looks really nice. Parked right next to the CLG rental van, like that typical white van, and they got like a CLG like fridge magnet on the van. That thing looked really dinky and really embarrassing. Like it's so embarrassing to roll up in that thing when you roll up to the absolute beauty caddy that TSM rolls up in. And I just thought that was hilarious. So Beansoup for that little dinky vehicle that CLG's got going there. That thing stinks.
It was even funnier in hindsight after like CLG beat TSM because like although like it's just funny to like shit on CLG for whatever and like it's like totally warranted because everybody thinks it's funny and then like TSM just lost to them and then like I don't know. I kind of want that like CLG van to become a meme because it's pretty funny.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm just picturing like when CLG announces which players they're benching, it's gonna be like those two players in the van like driving off or something. I don't know.
I want them to announce a Hot Wheels sponsor. That would be sick. Anyway, for those wondering, like, because this felt weird to me to go with CLG's van as the Beansoup after all the shit that happened with CLG this week. But I'm just letting you know, I committed to them being the Beansoup on Friday. As soon as we saw that post, I was like, well, I got my Beansoup award for the week because that thing was fucking hilarious. Yeah. Anyways, that's it for Popoff Beansoup. Before we get into the game predictions, I want to shout out BNT 250, obviously a friend of JNT, so he's, I guess, a Smurf or something in this sense. For the sub. Also, we got a new emote. Unfortunately, we can only have one tier 1 emote. We don't know what that's about, but we got our new Clown Suo, the Clown Yasuo emote, but it has to be tier 2 sub. Sorry, we wish we could make it tier 1, but I don't know. Blame Twitch for that.
Yeah,
But,
blame them.
I can't even use it
I can.
because I'm not a tier 2 sub. That is Beansoup in itself. Beansoup goes to Twitch. But anyways, that emote is hilarious. I love it. If you guys want to sub tier 2, then you can have it as well. Let's get into the week 7 game predictions, rather. I fell a game behind this week, guys, on JNT. For lack of better judgment, I stuck with CLG. But
Yeah,
although maybe
the
that is my
CLG
better
faith
judgment,
was not rewarded.
I don't give a fuck. I will take CLG if there's any reasonable reason to do so. However, I'm running out of, like, when you're this bad, like, is there a reasonable time to take CLG? Like, what's a reasonable team? I guess Dignitas, but
Well, they play Immortals on Sunday, so we'll get to that. First up, Immortals versus Cloud9 on Friday. I'm gonna pick Cloud9. Although I think if it was maybe Cloud9 against any of the other teams that have been like in the top 6-ish, I might honestly consider taking the other team. But Immortals has been slumping just as hard as Cloud9, and
yeah,
similar to Cloud9's matches last week, this is a match that they kind of need to win just to like get a groove going moving forward.
I don't know how many times I could take C9 and then just be wrong. Like, they've actually lost so many games that think they're 9-9.
They're 9-9, yeah.
Like, that's crazy. I don't know how often I've taken Cloud9, but I've probably taken them in like 75 to 80% of games.
I've taken them probably more, I think. I think I probably take them in all but like 2 of them.
Yeah, I have no idea. But anyways, I will go Cloud9 again for the same reasons you mentioned. Immortals is looking bad as well, and there's always the chance that C9 decides to show up. So C9.
Next up, FlyQuest versus TSM. Despite the FlyQuest improvements and the new look Academy roster, I'm still going to roll with TSM. I think they are just straight up better individually, which is my main reason for doing so, even though I think FlyQuest as a team, they look really good.
Yeah, FlyQuest has their work cut out for them this week, guys. They are going up against TSM, EG, and 100 Thieves.
They're pulling the Golden Guardians from last week.
FlyQuest is really going to be tested this week. Anyways, yeah, TSM for me as well. We're gonna see what FlyQuest is made of.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up,
Dig and 100 Thieves.
Yeah, let's go next to 100 Thieves.
100 Thieves.
Yeah. CLG versus Team Liquid. Team Liquid.
Team Liquid. You know what? Do you remember last week how all the games we were like, this is so one-sided, this is so one-sided, and then we're like, and then we literally said, whenever we do that, there's just a bunch of upsets. That's literally what happened.
Yeah, the top teams all lost on that first day.
Yeah.
Similar to exactly how this one could play out with Cloud9, TSM, and 100 Thieves. Like,
yeah,
knowing our luck, it could happen again.
Does lightning strike twice? I'm gonna say no, but anyways, Team Liquid over CLG. Golden Guardians, EG. I think we both got to go EG on this one, right? They're looking too good right now. They've won 8 in a row.
Yes, I agree. Not because they've won 8 in a row, just because I think they're just playing really well. I mean, yeah, sure, they've won 8 games in a row as a product of that, but like, even if they had been like lost a couple of those games, like, they're still looking really, really good. It's not like they're getting gifted wins or like they're looking shit but still winning. They're just looking really good.
Yeah, it's like they're looking good, and as we mentioned before, they still have room to improve in the jungle and top lane, honestly, and maybe a little bit mid, but anyways.
Yeah.
CLG Cloud9 is the first game on Saturday.
Cloud9.
Yeah, it's still Cloud9. Like I said, I want to take CLG if there's any reasonable game to do so. I don't even know who that opponent is anymore, because it would probably be just Dignitas, and even last week they lost to Dignitas. Anyway.
Yeah. Next up, Team Liquid versus 100 Thieves. I'm gonna pick 100 Thieves, but I'm gonna like say this
If
that I'll.
Alfari's playing,
No, no, I'm just saying that like it'll probably be like how they play on Friday kind of move for who I pick.
I just have faith that 100 Thieves is still the better team. Yeah, there's not really much more to say.
Oh yeah, I guess the jungle matchup is Closer versus Armeo. Yeah, 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. TSM versus Immortals. TSM.
TSM.
Dignitas versus Golden Guardians.
I think we're both going Golden Guardians.
I'm gonna pick Golden Guardians, but similar to last time when Golden Guardians was playing Dignitas, I feel like this is a match they're just gonna lose. Like, I want them to win, obviously, but I think they're just gonna lose. Just out of like, I'm seeing the future of the script.
Maybe it is possible.
And then FlyQuest versus EG in our last game, another kind of prove it game for an up and coming team against EG. I'm still gonna roll with EG.
Yeah, it's EG.
Dude.
Good versus evil, though. I always like this matchup, but they haven't played into it as much as they used to. Like at the start, they used to play the good versus evil, and they don't really. I guess it's hard to do that when FlyQuest is just dog shit.
Yeah,
it's hard to have a rivalry when one team's just looking way better than the other.
First match Sunday: Immortals versus CLG. Sorry, CLG. Me take Immortals.
So
are you gonna let CLG cost you another win?
Maybe. This is one where I'll consider depending on what the swaps look like.
Okay, that's fair enough.
We don't know what like normally we have an idea of who's playing. I don't even know who the hell's playing this week for CLG.
Yeah.
And Immortals has struggled, but I'll stick with Immortals for now. But I think it's totally fair to swap this one considering we don't even know what the fuck the lineup is.
Yeah. TSM versus Team Liquid. Huh. I don't know who to take. Oh yeah, wait, TSM is 4-0 against Team Liquid in regular season matches. Oh Jesus. Are they really gonna sweep Team Liquid? I don't think so.
I'm gonna take Team Liquid
because
not because I think Team Liquid is the favorite here, but because we saw TSM trying out some stuff. They're playing like the Lee Sin mid, which is not their, it's not their go-to stuff. There's a chance that they try to run that back again. I don't know. I guess I feel like taking an upset, honestly, is one of the reasons too. Like TSM still looked fine. I guess they looked a little bit weak in the CLG game this weekend, so maybe they struggled a little bit. I guess I just want to take an upset, honestly.
I'm gonna take Team Liquid too. I don't know.
No real reason, just
yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. I can't really blame you on that one.
Yeah. All right.
Dig
EG.
EG.
Diggs poo poo caca.
FlyQuest 100. Do we
100.
have anything different this week?
Yeah, I took Team Liquid over. No, I did one thing. Where was it? Oh, CLG. Wait, no. Did you take Immortals over CLG? No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did.
Wait, you took.
Well, that's boring. If we have the exact same picks, that's fucking boring. We haven't had a week.
I'm probably gonna switch some stuff. So
anyway,
I always do.
I'll tell you what. If we have the exact same picks, that's enough for me to go CLG over Immortals.
Okay, fair enough.
If all of our picks are the same, by that point, I'll go CLG.
100 Thieves FlyQuest. I'm still gonna roll with 100 Thieves.
Yeah, same.
And similar Golden Guardians Cloud9. I'm still gonna roll with Cloud9.
Yeah, me as well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's kind of a boring week for predictions, if I'm being quite honest.
Yeah.
Sorry. Whoops. Not much you can do there. Let's get into quick news. There was quite a few things that came out this week.
Yeah. First up, the new champion got teased.
Yeah.
It looks kind of interesting. It's got a revive on a basic ability, which
yeah.
I'm gonna assume that's gonna be something that gets quickly reworked / removed, either before release or instantly after release.
Like, could they not just change the time that it takes for someone to revive?
Could they not just get rid of it?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. There was a Reddit post of someone that's like, I don't want to be revived or whatever. I didn't even read the post. Actually.
It was just it was kind of a shit post. It was a funny post because they were like, I want to like be able to go pee quickly, or I want to go get some water when I die. And it's like, dude, like that's true. Like sometimes when it's like kind of late game and I die, like I gotta go like take a pee real quick, or I gotta go like get some water, or I gotta go like wash my hands if they're like all grimy.
I didn't even read that. That's
No,
actually
it
funny
was a
though.
funny post. I upvoted that post. I don't honestly upvote a lot of Reddit posts, especially on the League subreddit, because it's all just a bunch of bullshit. But that's one of the few posts that I upvoted because it was funny.
Yeah, I didn't upvote that one because I didn't read it. But anyways, yeah, I'm against the revive thing because look, if you win a big team fight late game, like that should be your opportunity to take Baron. But now if you have people reviving, that could be like you lost the fight and now you have the advantage. If the other team like is barely like they barely scraped out a win, they're like all 1 HP. Now you have already based and you're full HP. You get to run to Baron as the other team has to base and then run to Baron. So they get the advantage after like a close team fight. Like it's possible that that's how it works now. I just don't think that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
I always like judgment before I see the champion and actually see how often that stuff comes into play, but I just know that it's possible for that to happen, and for that reason, I don't like the mechanic. But yeah,
Yeah. Next up, with the whole Team Liquid situation, with Armeo stepping up to starting roster, and Santorin taking a break for health reasons, Inori has been signed to Team Liquid Academy, and I think Inori has previously played on Team Liquid Academy in the past, and he's just kind of been like an academy guy for the last like 2-3 years.
yeah. Since was it since Phoenix won, or was
Yeah.
there someone else that he played for?
No, since then he went to TL Academy, then went to Cloud9 Academy, and now is back on Team Liquid Academy.
He had his Rengar game against TSM in
I
that
remember that,
season
and
6 or
Mordekaiser
whatever.
jungle. I remember that too.
I don't really remember that one. Anyways, I like Inori. He seems like a cool dude,
Yeah.
so good for him finding a thing. Although I think it does speak to like they can't be having Armeo play Academy and LCS forever. So maybe it means Santorin ain't close to coming back.
Maybe.
Don't know. That's yeah. It's
Yeah.
honestly that's what I think when I see that, but I don't know if that's the case. So uh, I would just say that if I'm a Team Liquid fan seeing that, I'm like shit.
Mm,
But maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just like that's what would happen regardless of whether Santorin's coming back soon or not. So
yeah.
next up,
One thing we quickly, I guess, missed when we were discussing the Golden Guardians FlyQuest stuff was a solo. Um, he's no longer starting for Golden Guardians. And he basically just put out a little twit longer on his Twitter, basically just discussing that Golden Guardians informed him that they were going to be trading for Licorice, and that it was a bit surprising for him, and he still wants to compete and is looking to compete. So we briefly discussed it. If the transfer window is still open, maybe he joins a team before the end of the split, and if not, I think he's deserving of a starting spot, maybe moving into next year. So we'll just have to see.
he's LCS level, guys. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty clear. Maybe he's not a top tier top laner, but he's definitely able to play LCS, and we saw that just this split alone. Like we've seen it last year. We know that he's able to play, and I do believe that he's still under contract with Golden Guardians. But I think
Yes,
they
he
just made
is.
it clear. I think they just made it clear that they're going with Licorice, and that Licorice is their guy, and that if teams are willing to want him, rather, that
Hmm.
Golden Guardians would probably deal his contract. That's the way it looks right now. It doesn't look like he's playing any more games. So anyway,
Yeah. Next up,
next.
the LPL kind of joined in on the LCS benchings, and FPX. Former world champions FPX. They actually benched Nuguri for one series. He actually played in their series against Vici Gaming this morning, but they had made a post earlier in the week mentioning how that their backup top laner was going to be coming in, and it wasn't exactly clear how long he was going to be out. But it seems like it might have only been like a one game series type thing. But be on the lookout. Nuguri could be in and out of the starting lineup there.
Really weird because Nuggery's like
Cracked.
this is like world. Yeah, I mean he's a world champion first of all, but this is a world class top laner. I don't know. Haven't been watching much LPL, so I don't know what's going on. But it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah. Next up, some more Dardoch news. Feels like for the last 4 weeks, there's been like little itty bitty Dardoch news coming out. But
Yeah.
he joined Immortals as their assistant head coach, which I thought was actually pretty surprising when it first got announced. That was like one of the things that I did not expect was going to happen whatsoever. That he was going
Yeah.
to like join Immortals as a coach.
Yeah, well, we talked when he got benched or got released rather, more than just benched. We talked about would Dardoch get another shot? Like, is this it? Is he done? Well, I guess he's not done. This is a shot, if you will. It's a new it's something. It's just not at all what we would have expected. Like Dardoch as a coach. I guess he's not afraid to give his opinion. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
He did say that he still wants to play as a player,
Yeah.
but
It,
for the time being, he
at
coached.
this point in the year, it's hard to find a spot to play, right? So
Yeah.
it's probably like, look, I'll coach for this year. It's really good for him, honestly, because it's a good way for him to continue to be involved in LCS meta and stuff like that. So like his brain will constantly be working on League of Legends things. And so I think it's definitely better for him to be part of a team, with even if it's coaching rather than not. So yeah, good for him for finding something.
All right, and almost last up, the LCS announced that the finals this year are going to be held in Newark, New Jersey, from
Whoa.
August 28th to the 29th. Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, so I will probably try to get there. Hopefully, I'll be able to go.
BNT is BNT in New Jersey as well?
Yeah, he said he didn't want to go, so
Oh, dude, Ian, what, bro? You gotta go, man.
I got some friends that I'll go with.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, as soon as I saw New Jersey, I had to message JNT. I was like, "Yeah, he's probably gonna want to go to this thing."
I will
That's kind of
probably
cool.
do my best to try and go.
He says Newark, yikes,
Well,
not that nice of a place. I don't know anything about
Newark's fine.
it. Okay,
I've been to Newark a
he,
bunch of times.
he doesn't seem to be too sold on it. Anyways, yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Won't be your first, won't be your last. You've been to Toronto. We went together in Detroit.
Yeah, third
JNT's
LCS
been to quite
finals.
a few.
Yeah, if I
Yeah,
go.
man. Honestly, like kind of high rolling on those, eh? Because, well, especially since there's a lot of demand for it to go to Texas. So it won't surprise me if next year it's in Texas, which is where you're at right now. Maybe you get to, like, you could be leading the world in LCS finals
Well, that's
appearances.
definitely not true.
Well, outside of the actual, like,
Well, when they did MSG in summer 2015, I really wanted to go, but it kind of dates didn't really line up to actually go to that. But a bunch of my friends from Jersey went to MSG 2015, where CLG took down TSM, and they
that would
said
have been
that
a
was like
great
super.
one.
Oh yeah, like dude, it was apparently super hyped there.
Like, think about like that rivalry back then, right? We saw C9 TSM was insane in Toronto. I bet you
Mm-hmm.
TSM CLG was probably even better, considering, well, I guess, I don't know, I was gonna say considering League was probably more hype in season 5, but season 6 League was still pretty damn hype. Like that's when LCS actually like mattered, like winning a split in LCS nowadays doesn't matter nearly as much as it did back
Yeah.
season 5, season 6. But anyways, I've gone on long enough about this. Let's go next.
Yeah,
It's supposed to be quick news.
last up, LS kind of posted on his Twitter some kind of sad news is that he actually is experiencing a bunch of health issues. He's got like a bit of a long list of issues that he seems to have after a doctor's appointment / checkup.
He said it in his tweet if anyone's curious, but I think he said something like liver, maybe lungs. I don't know if he said lungs or not, but I'm pretty sure he said something with his liver. Anyways, he's having health issues, so his content's going to be put on pause for a little bit. I mean, he'll get some tests done, and then we'll learn more about that. But if people are wondering where LS is and why he's maybe not co-streaming or why he's not streaming altogether, well, now you know why if you haven't heard yet. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And I mean, LS is one of the most influential guys in League of Legends, so pretty sure I'm not alone in saying that everyone's hoping for his recovery and that he can go back to doing what he likes to do. JNT, I added a couple of things to the quick news.
Well,
One
it's
is
quick,
the
so hurry up.
100 Thieves Gucci thing.
Oh yeah, I saw
Uh,
that. I don't even
I,
know what to think about that.
look, okay, I'm not gonna pretend I care about like Gucci and fancy clothes and shit like that. Like, clearly, I'm not that guy, but like that is a huge brand, And I mean, 100 Thieves is not new to finding like big brands, and this is just another one. Definitely thought it was noteworthy because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are not like me and that are really hyped about this partnership. So, I mean, we'll see some shit drop, I'm sure, with that if it hasn't already. I don't
Yeah,
know. And the other,
I'm normally one to take an interest whenever 100 Thieves does do like their merch stuff because I have bought on 2 separate occasions some of their merch, but with
it's gonna be
the
expensive,
yeah,
man.
that's gonna be way out of my budget range. Nor would I ever want to pay for an article of clothing that is over $100. That's not shoes. So
Yeah, that ain't. Yeah. Anyways, it's not my kind of thing, but I feel like people would be interested in that, so maybe they can have a look at that. One last shout out more. This wasn't quick news. This is just something I observed over the weekend. At 2 minutes past the hour, games were starting this week. Like if games started at 4 o'clock, 4:02, we were already in Champ Select. Same thing. I think it was same thing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So huge props to the LCS for not fucking around when the LCS is supposed to start. It started. It wasn't 4:23 getting into Champ Select anymore, which was like just
And it does
something
seem
that
also that the
people.
number of tech pauses seems to be declining.
Yeah, and
And
so
players, I guess, are taking their shits earlier.
yeah. Anyways, huge props when we finally have them listening to the community, because the community's been really vocal about just start the damn game. So it's nice to see them doing that. Although I will say the time in between games has still been kind of long. But nonetheless, credit where credit is due. So shout out to the LCS for that. Are you picking up your dog? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Hey, oh, okay. I don't think there's anything else for this episode. For those watching the end, you get to see J&T's dog. It's rather cute. Anything you want to shout out, J&T?
Shout out my dog.
Shout out to Vicky. That is Vicky.
She's a cutie.
CFP listeners got to meet Vicky this week. And if CFP listeners are extra nice, they'll subscribe. And if they're extra nice, they'll subscribe at tier 2 on Twitch to get an amazing Yasuo clown emote. It actually is hilarious.
It actually is a really good emote. I am a bit
awesome.
fuming that we only get one per tier, so we'll probably try to switch it around because I think the Yasuo one is cooler. But I do
What do you
also
guys
like the
think-
both of them.
What do you guys think is better, Yasuo or the Beansoup one, for people in the live chat? I'd be curious to know which one you guys like more. Because maybe we could swap it to make the Yasuo the tier 1.
There you
I
go.
don't want to make.
I put them both in there for people in the live chat if they want to see.
I don't. Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I would appreciate if people subbed at tier 2, but I don't want anyone to have to sub at tier 2 just to get an emote. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is a tier 2 sub cost, anyways? I don't
More
know.
than
I'm
a tier
rambling.
1, that's all I'll say.
Anyways, and if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe there. We got a few subs last week, and we always appreciate you guys. The last thing I'll say is, guys, we haven't really gotten much feedback from you guys in a while, and so I will say, as long as you guys are respectful, we are more than open to hearing some feedback. If you guys want to join the Discord, you can message me in DMs, or JNT. You can message us in DMs on Twitter. More than fine for you guys to give feedback on the podcast. We're always willing to listen to you guys, and we haven't gotten much feedback lately, so that was just something that I thought I would say. If there's nothing else, J&T, let's close it out. Yeah?
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone. This has been episode 50. We're halfway through. We're going to get to 100 one day, but for now, we're at 50. And thank you guys so much for the support. We'll see you guys next week, same time.